Getting all four wheels off the ground on jack stands isn't complicated, but there is a right way to do it, and a few ways that can get you into some trouble. In my last video, I went over some common jack stand mistakes, and a lot of you asked how to safely lift the entire car off the ground. So in this video, I'm going to walk through a step-by-step method that you can use at home, whether you're working with one jack or two. We'll go over a few things to watch out for, like proper lift points, keeping the car stable as you go up, and how to avoid putting uneven stress on the vehicle. This is especially important when you're lifting all four corners because the balance of the car changes as you go up in the air. We're going to discuss a couple of common pitfalls you might encounter as well. Let's take a look at how to do this safely. Before I show you the step-by-step of how to get to this point, let's go over a few common mistakes I see when people try to get all four wheels up off the ground. The first mistake I see is just using the wrong equipment, modified equipment, or setting up in the wrong location. You want to make sure you're working on some solid, level, and smooth surface and using quality jack stands and a proper jack that can handle the weight of your vehicle. Another mistake I see is lifting one end of the vehicle all the way up before touching the other end. What that does is shift all the weight and balance in one direction. It can make the car less stable when you go lift the other side. You want to bring the vehicle up in stages so it stays balanced, especially if you're going up high. Another big one is using the wrong lift points. You always want to lift from solid structural areas like the frame or the manufacturer recommended lifting points, not movable suspension components or thin sheet metal. If you're not sure, it's worth taking a minute to look up for your specific vehicle. I also see people set their jack stands at different heights or on uneven surfaces, and that could twist the chassis slightly or make the vehicle unstable. Make sure your stands are even, they're on solid ground and fully locked in place. Another simple one is just not using wheel chocks and the parking brake. Before you even start lifting, you want to make sure the car can't roll, especially when only one end is off the ground. And probably the most common mistake is just rushing through it. Take your time, double check your setup, and make sure everything feels solid before you move on to the next step. All right, let's go show you some examples here. Starting with site preparation, we're here in the garage. We've obviously got a flat, level, smooth ground to jack up on. I've put the vehicle in park. We've set the parking brake, and now we're going to put some wheel chocks behind the back wheels over here. Put one behind and one in front. And that should give us the stability we need to get started. By this point, you should have already located a couple of places where you can put your jack. I like to go with my jack in the middle because we're going to lift the entire front of the vehicle off the ground first, and then we're going to go to the back. And the reason I like to do that, we have a front wheel drive car. Most of the weight is up here. I like to get that stable first before we go to the back. Additionally, we've got the parking brake set in the rear and the wheel chocks in the rear. So we'll do that last because that's the last part of the car to get locked up and chocked to keep it from rolling. It's really important here we talk about one more thing. When we're lifting this jack up, a couple of things are happening. One, this jack is going to be fixed to the car, and these wheels here, they need to be able to roll towards the car, towards the middle of the car as this jack goes up. Okay, the rear wheels are fixed to the ground. As we lift this thing up, the jack is going to roll underneath. You want to make sure that your wheels, if you can, I usually like to try to spin them around so they're rolling in the correct direction. Now, they will move on their own. The jack will pull them around, but sometimes they can jam a little and start to drag. So if I can get these casters going in the correct direction towards the middle of the car, that usually helps this thing roll underneath the car so it goes up smoothly without the jack kicking one direction or another. On this vehicle, I've already located these lifting points. We've got a radiator support with a cross member that connects to the subframe at the front of the vehicle, which is just behind the engine. And on that cross member at the front of it where it meets the radiator support, there's this lifting block. This is designed to lift the car straight up the middle and the front, and that's what we're using now. So let's get this jack under here. The other thing I wanted to mention too, depending on how high you want to go with your vehicle, you want to leave some extra room in the jack because what's going to happen is this jack will run out of room. So if we jack this thing all the way up, it has a maximum lifting height. Okay, so we're going to stop here. And what happens is if you try to max out your lifting height and put your jack stands as high as possible, you might have trouble getting it back off the jack stands later. Okay, so it's important to leave yourself an inch or two before your maximum height. You know, figure out what that is for your jack and for your jack stands, and just make sure that you've got a little bit of extra lifting height to get this back off the jack stands when you're done. So I don't want to go that high. And I should probably mention, you should have some particular reason you're trying to get your vehicle off the ground, all four wheels. Maybe you want to do a tire rotation. Maybe you're trying to do a brake job or some suspension work front and rear. exhaust work perhaps. You need some clearance under the entire vehicle so you can crawl under there and get your exhaust lowered down. There's a lot of scenarios where you might want to do this. I know we made a couple of transmission fluid videos and we talked about keeping the car level when we checked the transmission fluid level on the Toyota Camrys that we filmed. So there's a lot of reasons why you might want to have all four wheels off the ground, but make sure you understand your purpose and what you're trying to achieve. If you only need the tires an inch off the ground, maybe just go an inch off the ground. If you're just going to do a tire rotation, there's no reason to have a foot of space underneath your tire between the ground. You don't need all that room. So just kind of identify what it is that you're trying to accomplish and set the height accordingly, okay? If you need a lot of extra room because you're pulling the exhaust down underneath, well, you might want to go to the maximum of your jack stands and your jack, and that'll be the height that you're going to work at. So keep in mind, the higher you go, you sacrifice a little bit of stability in the jack stands. There is some wiggle in there, some movement. You know, the car will flex a little bit as everything moves around. So, you know, the lower the better, truthfully, but you can be done safely at any height. So just make sure you've got quality equipment and you understand what you're working with here. So let's go ahead and find this point under here and let's get this front end jacked up. So I'm going to tighten my pump handle and I'm going to bring this in looking underneath at my lifting point on the cross member here. Now I'm in the middle of my jack pad and I've got contact with it. Okay, so this is what I was talking about, these casters here. If you can see them, they kind of roll around, right? So you want to try to get them in this direction. I'll show you one more time here, where they're pushing towards the middle of the car before you engage the jack, okay? It just helps it roll better. So we're in the middle of the jack there, and if you watch as I jack this up, you're going to see this thing start to creep forward, this jack. I should say creep rearward. It's going to go towards the middle of the car. You're going to see it start to creep a little bit as we lift this thing. Okay, and that's because the rear wheels are fixed to the ground right now with the chocks and the parking brake. There it goes, it's starting to creep. Okay, for more leverage, you can get to the end of your jack stand. You can pull harder if you want. A little more leverage. And we're going to bring this thing up fairly high so you can kind of see what that looks like. Again, we want to leave that room at the end of the jack height, a couple inches, so that we can get this back off the jack stands later. All right, so I think this is a pretty good height here. Quick service reminder. You guys know we love hearing from you in the comments. I like to go in there and answer as many of your comments as I can. I want to see what you guys are interested in. I like to get your thoughts. I'm learning from you people as well as you guys are learning from me. I love this interaction. I think it's great for us. It certainly helps our channel grow as well. Don't forget to like, subscribe, share this video with people you think that can use this information. We're putting this content out for you guys to help you make your life a little bit easier and help you navigate the auto repair world. So thanks for following along with us, and let's get back to the video. Now that I feel like we've got the proper lifting height, just double check your jack handle. Make sure that it's all the way in the tight position so it doesn't bleed down while you're trying to put your jack stands in there. And then I like to run this handle up all the way. This way you're not tripping on it or somebody else is not going to kick the jack out if you're working in the garage like we are with other people around. I like to put that up out of the way while we're putting the jack stands in. Let's take a second to talk about the equipment we're using here. I've got these 4 jack stands I picked up from Harbor Freight. They were pretty inexpensive. I think they were $49 a set. You know, when I did my last video, I've been using AC Delco jack stands forever. And some of you commented that you like the pin style better, and I can understand that. These pins are in here. They stop you from lifting this lever up, so the pawl can't drop on there. So this gives you like a little extra safety feature. Now the jack stands we've been using for years without the pins in them, they work just fine as well. When these jack stands are fully loaded with the weight of the car, it is extremely difficult to lift this lever up, okay, once that weight is on there. So you shouldn't be concerned about that. This type of jack stand's been around for a long time. You're not just going to simply bump it with an elbow or something and have the car drop all the way down. That's not really a likely scenario, but if you feel better, these jack stands are fantastic, great value, I think, and they come with the pins in there, so if it makes you feel a little more confident, you can do that. Now, in my last lifting video, we talked about jack stands. I mentioned finding the weight of your vehicle. You can look that up online. I mentioned using the gross vehicle weight rating, which is the fully loaded weight of the vehicle's capacity that you can find in the door decal. Of course, that would be fully loaded, you know, the maximum weight the car can carry, but not the weight of the car. It's a good starting point for you to determine what size jack you need and what size jack stands you need. So we're using a 3-ton jack that's capable of lifting 6,000 pounds maximum. And then I've got two sets of these 3-ton jack stands here. And these 3-ton jack stands are per pair. I don't think I clarified that in my last video. So got plenty of weight to hold this car. This car is probably not more than 4,500 pounds maximum. So plenty of weight for this vehicle. Just make sure you're using the right equipment for yours. All right, so now we're gonna adjust the height of our jack stands. These obviously have a lever to drop them down, and then they can ratchet up. So you can set them at any height. If you pull it far enough, this will come out completely. That's not a problem. They're designed to do that, but it's good to keep in mind that this is the final step on there. It's as high as you can go. So when we put this in here, we drop it to that very last notch. That's gonna be the maximum height. Now, you can see on here that this is not gonna fit right under there. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna go down one more notch. You can count the number of clicks on there. So that's right there, the first click, and then we're gonna go one more, okay? So we're gonna set it second from the highest position on there. We can put our pin back through, safety pin. These are nice. They have this little clip that goes in the end so the pin can't slide out. You just slide this one through. That stops your pin from coming out, stops your handle from lifting. And then we can set this in place under the car. Now, it's important, these saddles on here, they have this U shape, and we want the weight to sit in the middle of that if we can. We're using the pinch weld, which is very thin. So that thin spot, we want to sit at the lowest point. This way it's not moving on us later. It's not offsetting the weight to one side or the other. Sitting right down in the middle, all the load down to the center of the surface area at the bottom here. So we're going to put them here. You can see there's a couple of notches on this pinch weld. That's usually the lifting point of the car for most vehicles. When we put them on the lift, that's what we're looking for generally. So I like to put this one jack stand here, and we want to set the other jack stands to the same height. So go through, I've already done this. So they're all sitting at the same height. We want this vehicle to go up level. We're going to take one of these to the other side and put it in the same location. I've installed our other jack stand on the driver's side in the same location that I showed you on the passenger side. So we're all set here with 2 jack stands underneath the pinch welds towards the front of the car. And now we just want to let this jack down slowly onto our jack stands. We're going to slowly transfer the weight from the front of this car to the midsection back there where the pinch welds are, okay? So you might need to pull this handle down a little bit. It's probably going to go up a hair just to get it to clear the car. You want to make sure this is not going to hit your bumper somewhere. So make enough room for that so we can contact the jack stands cleanly. And then we're going to take this handle, we're going to release the hydraulic pressure slowly. Now this is one of the tricks here. You don't want to let this thing slam down. It can cause things to be unstable. It'll cause damage to your pinch welds and things like that. So this is a process. You want to practice the technique of just cracking this handle, and you can watch the car come down nice and slow. So we're going to keep an eye on this thing. We're going to crack it nice and gently on the jack stands. Okay, you can hear the creaking going on. Nothing to be nervous of there. And then we're going to take the jack out. We've got the weight on there. If you want to give it a little shake right now while you got the jack under there, you can do that. Make sure it's nice and stable. Give it some bumps. If you want to give it a little bit of a side bump, you can make sure that everything is stable and nothing is moving around. You can also walk around and double check, make sure that you're sitting in the lowest part of the saddle on these and that your jack stands haven't cocked at all. Nothing's leaning or crooked. All 4 points are contacting the ground. All right, we're going to do something similar in the rear here. Now we've got the front end up on the jack stands. We're going to bring this jack in. Same things to be aware of. You want to make sure those wheels are rolling in towards the middle of the car. This way when we jack it, they can continue to creep towards the middle. Okay, we can go ahead and tighten up our handle, roll your jack in as you're pumping it up and get it on the lift point. Now we've already located the lift point on this car, and it's right up the middle here. This is specifically for lifting the back end of the car. That's why they put that extra metal on here. We're going to engage that and we'll begin jacking. This is probably a good time to mention, I don't know if you guys noticed here, but I'm using this knee pad here. And you know, this is one of those tools that you don't ever really think about until you need it. I can't tell you how many times I've been working without a little cushion here, and you put your knee, you slam it down on top of a little pebble or something like that. Those things can be painful, obviously cause a little bit of damage to you. So if you run over to anywhere, Home Depot's got these little working knee pads and stuff. They're really handy to have around. Let's get this up in the air. And you notice while I'm jacking, I'm not anywhere underneath the car. That's not a great idea. Just in case you have a mishap. Yeah, you could damage the car, but at least we'll be safe under here. All right, so we just want to get this high enough so that it's pretty level with the other side, maybe a ½ inch higher or so we can get our jack stands under there. We've already set all 4 of them to equal height, the same number of teeth on that pawl and the jack stand, and we're going to go ahead and stick these underneath the car. Same as we did on the front, we've got our jack stand set to equal height here. We've got our lock pins in, our safety retainers in, and then you can go ahead and just slide these underneath that same location. You'll see the 2 dimples on the pinch weld. We'll get that centered in the middle of the saddle. We'll do the same thing on the other side. All right, last step here, we're going to let that hydraulic pressure out slowly. And we're going to set this down gently on those 2 rear jack stands on the pinch weld. All right. Now, when I did my last video, a lot of you had some great comments, some things you like to do for extra safety. Maybe you want to put some extra wood pieces underneath this car and bring them up close to the body somewhere. Just any kind of redundancy that you have. A lot of you had a lot of great comments in that last video. So anything you need to do to feel safe. We're only using 1 jack here. So of course, if you had 2 jacks, you could leave 1 towards the front, 1 towards the back. Again, I would recommend that you take the weight off of these things. You want to leave this jack under here, you can, but take the weight off it and leave it a little bit short of the pad that you're on. This way you're not causing an extra place for this thing to rock around on for some reason. We don't want this interfering with what our jack stands are doing. We want the weight securely on the 4 corners there, but you can leave this under there for good measure if you want. Tighten your handle back up, make sure it's up where nobody's going to bump it. Maybe just gives you a little extra peace of mind to know that you've got some other safety measure underneath the car. So there's lots of great options for you out there, cinder blocks and wood and jacks and extra jack stands, whatever you need to do to feel comfortable under the car while you're working on it. By all means, go ahead and do that. But theoretically speaking, we should be pretty solid on 4 jack stands. So let's pull this jack out completely, and we're going to give it another bump and shake. This will be the final step before you think about taking anything off of this car, pulling any wheels, or climbing underneath the car. You really want to make sure this thing is secure and stable. Nothing's rocking or wiggling to the point where you feel like something could tip and fall over. A lot of times when we're working on the car, we're tugging, pulling, we're using pry bars and hammers, and we're shifting the weight around a little bit. And the lateral or side-to-side forces are really what kind of gets things to be unstable. It's not the weight pushing down, it's the going side to side. So you want to be extra aware of that while you're working in and around your car. Go ahead and give it a couple of shakes. Make sure everything feels enough sturdy where nothing's going to fall off. You can see it's got a little wiggly going on here. There's not a whole lot you can do about that on jack stands. You're going to have a little bit of movement, especially as high as we went. You can see we got, a solid 6 inches probably underneath the wheels. We got enough room to do lots of work in here. The stability is pretty solid, but again, you want to be careful of those side-to-side loads like we're doing on here now. This up and down is not really causing much, just this motion moving side to side, okay? I mentioned earlier in the video about going up in stages if you were gonna go higher than something like this. Okay, so we were able to get this up, you saw, in 1 stage front, 1 stage back. You see here I've got these larger jack stands. These are a higher weight capacity. They also allow us additional height. So there are times when you want to get the vehicle even higher. We want to use something a little more stable, a larger footprint. Thicker metal is great, something that can help these side-to-side loads a little bit better. And we also want to go up in stages, okay? So we don't want to try to hit something this high all in 1 step. So in this example, what I would recommend you do is you jack it up. Maybe you set your first height at the lowest setting, okay, not the highest setting. Just put your front stands in, go jack up the back, put your rear stands in at the lowest height, maybe come back again to the front, and then go ahead and jack that up to the next level, okay? This way you're not pitching that angle too far. We want to make sure that this vehicle is not kind of putting all the weight and stress on these jack stands leaning at a steep angle. We don't want to do that, okay? So any way you need to do this to feel safe, use multiple stages as you see needed. There's no rush in getting these cars up in the air. You want to make sure at the end of the day that they're as stable as possible and that you're working safely underneath the car. We don't want to have any incidents or damage because something was cocked too much and you put too much pressure, or the car slips off a jack stand for some reason. We want to keep that weight and that load pushing down, not side to side or front to back, okay? So I hope that makes sense. Multiple stages if you're trying to go even higher. Even something like this, we're on the second to highest setting. Maybe you want to start off a little bit lower and then go a little bit higher after you get the vehicle level. Hopefully you've completed your work safely and now you're ready to restore the vehicle back to the ground. We're just going to reverse the same procedure. Nothing's really going to change much. You want to get your jack close to where you want it, get it back underneath your lifting point. Tighten the handle up, and then we can pump this up. And we only need to go high enough to get it back off those rear jack stands now. So we're going to go up an inch or so, maybe 2. And then let's find our jack stand. We'll go ahead, we've got some clearance here, about an inch between the saddle and the pinch weld. We'll just go ahead and slide these out. You don't need to restore them to the ground just yet, but I would say put them clear of the vehicle, at least a couple of feet away so that they're not underneath it when you're trying to let the car down. Let's go grab the other side, and I'll show you how we let this back to the ground. It's a good time to mention, if you happen to be doing some brake work on your car, keep in mind the parking brake is usually attached to the rear wheels. So go ahead and set your parking brake again before we let these wheels touch the ground. And you can see we still have our wheel chocks in place. So we'll go ahead and set this back down where it was. If you moved your wheel chocks, put them back close. We're going to use them again, and we're slowly going to let this car to the ground. Okay? Again, we don't want to pop this jack open fast and dump all the hydraulic pressure out and let this thing slam to the ground. We want to kind of take all these motions fairly slowly. Like I mentioned earlier in the intro of this video, take your time in doing these steps. This is really important, and safety is paramount. Same process in the front. We're going to tighten our jack handle, give it a couple of pumps. I should probably mention that these floor jacks are pretty nice here. These have the rapid pump on there, so when you don't have any weight on it, you can give it a couple of pumps, and the travel of the jack saddle here moves fairly quickly until you contact some weight. So these are kind of nice if you get yourself a rapid pump jack here. Just makes quicker work of trying to get this up to the actual height you need to get it to. So I'm going to slide this in place. I'm only a couple inches off of where my spot is for jacking. I'm going to put that right in the middle of that rubber pad in the saddle on the jack. And then we're going to bring it up nice and easy. We're going to contact that. And then we're going to jack this car up. We've got that parking brake set. We've got the rear chocks in place. And we're just going to get this again an inch or so off of those jack stand saddles. Okay, you can hear the weight come off of there. And then we're going to go slide these 2 jack stands out. Both of our jack stands are clear of the vehicle, driver's side and passenger side. Again, you want to make sure your handle is clear of your front bumper, the spoiler, skirt, whatever you have on there. You don't want to crush that by accident. We've got quite a ways to go. You can see we're pretty far off the ground. Again, we're going to crack this handle nice and slow. Make sure everything and everybody is clear of your vehicle. If you're working with a helper or something, obviously make sure they're standing far away from the car. When we let this weight down, we don't want anybody getting crushed. Nice and slow, we're coming to the ground. Okay. Pull your jack out, and you're all back to the ground. Now, I know a few of you guys are going to say, hey, Keith, what if I'm not driving a Toyota Corolla, the most popular car on the planet? And I'll say, no problem. We're going to show you an example here of something that's not quite so popular, but still able to put on 4 jack stands. First thing we're going to do is go up in the air. I'm going to talk about some of the features underneath this car that are completely different from what we showed you on that Toyota Corolla. Let's get this up in the air. So I've got this little Japanese truck up in the air, and I want to show you that this vehicle is completely unique from the other one in the fact that it's got a full frame on it. We've got lots of steel members in here that we can lift on, jack on, put jack stands on, but the principles don't change much, okay? We want to make sure we're lifting the front end first and then lifting the back end. You could do vice versa if you want, but that's kind of the process that I like to use. We're going to get this front end off the ground here using this cross member. Now this is all part of the frame on here. This is structurally strong. So we're going to put our jack saddle right under here. And the only thing we might be doing different on here, because we don't have the pinch welds, is we want to set our jack stands on the frame somewhere. Now what's kind of nice about this thing, it's got this giant forward cab on here. Okay, and we've got a lot of frame rail here that we can use. So what I might do differently on this car, if I was putting it on 4 jack stands, I would still jack it up here in the front, but maybe I'll put my jack stands here forward of the front wheels instead of towards the middle. This thing's got a fairly short wheelbase and a lot of overhang front and back. So I'm probably going to locate my jack stands on the frame here and here, or maybe I'll put them right here and here, somewhere where they're even on each side and they're still supporting the vehicle nicely. Okay, so those will go there, and then let's take a look at the back of the vehicle. In this example, On the rear of the vehicle, we've got a solid differential here made out of steel. It's pretty heavy duty. I have no problem jacking this vehicle up on this differential. Okay, so I would jack it up here, and I might even consider putting my jack stands right here on either end of this differential tube. Okay, so find a couple of spots. Those saddles will fit nicely on these rounded parts. One thing you need to keep in mind if you're putting your jack stands on suspension components, that the suspension is still going to operate. Okay, we don't have the wheels hanging anymore, and those springs are still in play. We've got these leaf spring stacks in here, so it's still possible if you put the jack stands on here and you grab the bed of this truck, it's still going to bounce while you have it up on your jack stand. So keep that in mind, but this is a secure place to put it. We've been doing this for decades on all the older rear-wheel drive cars. This was the primary location for putting your jack stands when we're working on cars. Gets the wheels off the ground and supports the weight of the car nicely. Now, if you didn't want to do that, maybe you need to take the leaf springs out. Then maybe you need to find a frame location in here where you can put your jack stands. We could put them here at the back of the frame. There's a couple of locations back here. You just have to find some spots. Something safe and secure where you can put the jack stand, okay? So maybe you move this exhaust out of the way a little bit and you put a jack stand over here. You can put them up a little bit closer to the differential if you had some space in here where it wasn't in your way to work, depending on the type of work you're going to do. So this car gives you lots of options. It's much different than that Corolla. Corolla has one jacking point in the rear, one jacking point in the front. This one you just got, because it's got a full frame in it, there are tons of choices on here. Let me give you one more example here. I've got this Lexus ES300 sedan. We're going to put it up in the air the rest of the way, and I'll show you some of the lifting points and jack stand locations for this one. So what makes this vehicle somewhat different from the Toyota Corolla we did is this one has got a full rectangle shaped perimeter style subframe. Okay, so this steel member goes in a giant box here. So what we want to do is we want to find this location at the front. It's past the radiator support. We don't ever want to jack up on the radiator support. It's not the best spot for it. But right here we've got this solid steel frame on there, or subframe I should call it, and it's got this little pop out in it. This is a great spot to put your floor jack, get the front end off the ground. If you remember earlier in the video when we looked at the Toyota Corolla, there was just a stamped piece of metal that jutted down in the middle. Okay, we didn't have this cross member to jack on. So this one here now has another steel cross member that goes side to side. It's very strong structurally, and we've got a nice little jacking point they've left us right here. You can see it popping out the bottom with a little hole in it. This is where we're going to put our jack to get the rear off the ground. On this car, for the jack stand locations, we're just going to go ahead and use the pinch welds like we did on the other car and like we have this one on the hoist, on the above ground hoist. So we've got them set on the pinch welds here just behind these rocker panels. It's a great place to put your jack stands. Now this car has got some more room underneath too. There are some other locations you could possibly put your jack stands if you wanted to, because we've got a little bit of subframe towards the front of the car a little further, but this is always a good spot to do that. While we're in here talking about jack stand safety, I want to address one of the concerns that a lot of people brought to my attention in the previous jack stand video that we made. And that concern was that people don't like this ratchet style without the pin. Now, earlier in this video, we did talk about the safety pin. Sure, that's secure and that kind of alleviates any concerns from your mind because that pin's in there and you know it can't, unless the pin comes out, you can't do anything. But I just wanted to show you what these ratcheting pawl style jack stands without the safety pin, how hard it is to get one of these cars to drop. So I've got the weight back on this car using an older style jack stand. It's one of my old AC Delco. I've been using these for decades. And I just want to show you that you cannot lift this. The weight is on the car and I can't tug this thing. I'm not just going to bump this and have the car fall to the ground. It's just not possible. Once the weight is in, that pawl has got all the pressure put on it so that it can't ratchet up and fall out, okay? So, you know, we'd really have to work hard at it, get the weight off of this car somehow, disturbing the car in its resting state enough to get the weight off of this and have this lever fall at the same time, which is really hard to do. Now, I want to just show you too here, you know, I can hit this lever up. It's not popping. If I take a pry bar in here and I tug on it, okay, it's not popping. I've got too much force from the weight of this car pushing down on that pawl. So just to get the notion out of your mind here that these things are unsafe, that's not the case. We've been using them like this for many decades. For years they didn't even have the safety pins that go in there. I think this is a concern that maybe some people brought to the attention of the manufacturer. They said, well, let's make people feel safer and put a pin in it. So these are perfectly safe. There's nothing wrong with this design, and I hope you understand that and hopefully alleviate some of your concerns. I hope this video has addressed some of your concerns that you guys have talked about in the previous video that we made. Getting all four wheels up the ground, maybe clarify a couple of things, address some of your concerns about the older style jack stands, show you some new products out there that you might want to use instead, and hopefully filled in a few gaps for you. Please let us know in the comments if you have any questions about any of this, any concerns about lifting your own vehicle up. We'll try to read those comments and get back to you so we get those questions answered for you so you guys are lifting safely out there. Appreciate you following along. We'll see you in the next video.